Business and data have gone together since the beginning of documented history. Bear with me for a second. The world's first known data warehouses, and I'm kind of stretching the definition here, were pieces of clay called the Kashim tablets, and scholars believed they recorded the exchange of barley between producers as well as the production of beer, which is proof, at least in my opinion, that data scientists have always loved to party. Fast forward 5,000 years and yottabytes of data later, and instead of getting closer together, however, the drive for specialization, those years that we do at university learning our specific craft, means that in many companies, their business and data specialists often feel disconnected from each other more and more each day. So how do we close that gap? Do we even acknowledge there's a gap? Well, digging into that question is the mission of that voice you just heard, that dismembered voice that you just heard, today's guest, Jordan Morrow. Jordan.
Hello. You talk like I do, Paul. First off, you're my doppelganger. We're going to rock that today. Secondly, I should have worn a white button-up with you, and they'd be like, wait a minute, look at these two. They related. They've got round circle glasses, peppered beards, short hair. Yep. Everybody should rock our look, Paul. Everybody.
Honestly, this has got to be the best looking podcast I think that's ever been made.
Absolutely. But you speak like I do, Paul, in that data literacy's been around since a cave person or Neanderthal was like, that berry kills me, that one doesn't. That animal eats me, that one doesn't. And sharing that information, you got to bridge gaps. You got to do things to disseminate value from information, that's for sure.
I love it. So, a bit of background for those people who don't know you. Jordan is known as the Godfather of Data Literacy. So, I should warn everyone, do not worry, no horses will be harmed in the making of today's podcast. He's the author of multiple books on the topic. His first book, some of you may be aware of, is called Be Data Literate. It was designed to help execs understand their data scientists better, as well as the technology they use. Now it's, I think it's just made it to its second edition, as recently as this year, been republished. And it was recently joined by its little brother, baby brother, the fourth in the series, Business 101 for the Data Professional, which, as the name suggests, is really intended to help address the other side of the challenge. So we're excited to have you on to talk about it, and congratulations on the new release.
Awesome. Thank you much. And I never knew I'd love writing so much, but I'll keep doing it as long as I can.
Oh, please do. I'm really enjoying it. Well, I want to get to the book in a second. Before we do, we've got a little warm-up exercise, just stretch, bit of calisthenics. We call the fast four that sometimes turns into the slow four, or the forgetful four if I forget one of the questions. You're ready?
Don't do that. We're going to then show our age. Don't forget questions. I'll try to remember all of the answers.
There you go. Should we give it a crack?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, first up, what would people say, people who know you best say is your superpower, Jordan?
Either my insatiable desire to learn. I'm always studying and learning as much as I can, probably. Or I'm relentless and focused. I do a lot of things, but I don't know. One of those two.
I love it. All right, the most impactful technology of all time.
Most impactful. Oh, the wheel. I'm going to go way, but we're going back. The wheel.
I love it. My caveman friends my Sumerian friends, I should say a thumbs up. Yeah. What would you like to see automate in your future? Everyone's talking about how AI is going to automate this and automate that for everyone else. What do you want it to automate for you?
Oh my goodness. For me, I want the old Star Trek automation of food. I just tell it, give me my food, and there it is. That's what I want. I can think sci-fi, right? Let's go big. I want my food.
Oh, yeah, no, I actually really like that.
And say, I want X, Y, Z, and then it just materializes.
No, I love that answer. And last but not least, it's a question that sometimes I feel needs explanation, but, getting to 50-something as I am, I learned, especially when mentoring people, there are hacks that I use with data, things that, as a business person particularly, that I instinctively do with data that other people don't, that have sort of helped me through my business career. What are some of the best practices or tips and tricks you've learned when it comes to dealing with data for you?
Oh my goodness. I start with the objective. What is the outcome you're trying to achieve? If you're staring at a massive pool of data, that can be intimidating. Where do I start? What am I exploring? But if I start with whatever I'm trying to achieve, don't start off with your answer, but like, I want data to do this. the overwhelming feeling of the vast amount of data can be narrowed down because you're pinpointed to, I need a solution for this. What does the data say?
And as we're about to discuss, the other side of the coin is also true, which is if you've got a lot of data and you are enamored of data, you can sometimes see playing with data as the objective in itself and lose sight of why it is you're there, which I guess is
Absolutely.
part of what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely.
All right. So maybe for those people who aren't so familiar with you, you want to talk us through your background and what led you to be known as the Godfather of Data Literacy. What unfortunate accident with a equestrian activity resulted in that?
Do we need to clarify where that even comes? I hope your audience understands. It comes from the movie The Godfather. If you haven't watched it, go watch. I can promise
Yes,
no
he does
horses.
not hurt horses. Sorry,
I
he
do
does not
not
hurt
hurt
horses.
horses. We're not gonna like that is not what happened. Okay, so where that it's kind of an interesting nickname. People I think love saying it. I struggle with it. I'm like, God, is that pompous of me to say? But people at this point are like, Jordan, you just need to own it. And I didn't give myself the nickname. I'll point that out. But I'm a data nerd through and through. And where this really stemmed from is I helped pioneer and invent the entire field of data literacy. And someone told me, another pioneer in this space, is like, you know what they call you, right? I'm like, no. And she said, the Godfather of Data Literacy, which, like, when it comes down to it, the goal is just to empower everyone to feel confident and comfortable with data. That's what my first book is about. I had someone, to give you an idea of the misunderstanding around like data literacy and stuff, is I had someone I knew. I was running in the mountains, the trails of Utah, and someone came up, saw me on the trail, congratulated me on my book. I don't think very long after it came out. And her comment was, I'm probably too stupid to read it or whatever. And I'm like, no, you're missing the point. The whole point is to empower you to feel confident with data. That's what Be Data Literate is, the first book. That's what data literacy is. And so hopefully that message is getting around. But that was all the way back in June 2016 when I started this journey in data literacy. And my first idea actually was probably before then. But here I am in December 2024, and it is still going. And it's
Yeah, well, I guess I got a bone to pick with you in that regard because
uh-oh, uh-oh.
yeah, but we shouldn't even be having this conversation. It's 2000, as you say, 2016. It's like 2024. Pick up the Harvard Business Review, pick up, gosh, now the popular press. Everything's about
Yeah.
data. Why is this such a persistent problem?
Well, I think the data space in general has a lot of topics and thoughts that are quote unquote problems for a long time, right? It was the database. Then it became all about big data until people realized, oh, it doesn't have to be big data. Oh, we hire a data scientist. Wait, we don't know what we're doing with data scientists. Oh, it's Hadoop, it's this, it's that. Now it's AI. It's always full of hype. It's always full of buzzwords. Data literacy was one of those. Data literacy wasn't going to solve everything. If you have data literacy and horrible data governance, what do you think is going to happen, right? And so it boils down to, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding around data and its goal. The goal of data is to support you and help you make better decisions. That's it. It's not the pretty visualization. It's not data science. It's how are we using data to make decisions? When you think about it from that perspective, it's easier to understand. But to your point, it's not just in the business setting. Take a look at freaking politics and tell me that they're using data properly. Nope, they know how to manipulate people with data, hands down. You talk about AI right now, and they're worried about hallucinations from AI. And I'm like, you know what hallucinates more with data than AI? Humans. And so it's this lack of fun. Most people do not go to school to be educated in the data space. And so that's not their purview. It's not their responsibility. So we're sitting here saying, go use data to make a decision. All the while, that might not be their background, so it's hard for them. And so it's just an ongoing, continuing thing. Like there's one organization I've been advising for over 3 years now. Now, it's got like 1.4 million people under its purview, so it's huge. But it's also the one I've seen doing the best. So it's a fascinating space, and it's not going to change. We've got generative AI, and AI became super hyped. It's a buzz now. That'll just shift more when AGI comes on board. Well, then it'll shift. It's just not going to stop. Can we continue to help people and educate them?
One of the things I like about all of your work there's a lot to like. I sound like a fanboy, but for me, it where a lot of these works can sometimes have the whiff of academia. What I appreciate about yours is it's clearly informed by the fact that, in your day job, you do this for a living. What you're senior vice president of data and AI transformation at Agile One
Yeah.
at the moment from memory, right? So I don't, I presume that, you go into work in the morning and go, oh, I've got all these theoretical ideas buzzing around my head, and you walk into a
You apply
boardroom
them.
or walk into a meeting and you're like, oh, so this is actually what's going on at the coalface.
Yeah, well, and you nailed it. In my day-to-day job, I work in data and AI, but I also still get invited to speak around the world. This isn't, and not to to harp on the academic side, but it's academic versus bringing the real world to life. And it was interesting when I wrote my third book. I think it was book three. I had an editor at my publisher say, "Remember, not too many personal examples, business examples, please." Something like that. And I was like, "No, people relate to personal examples.
Mm.
That is real life." And happy to say I didn't change, I don't think, anything. And I'm not going to change anything. Because to your point, you go from the academic research side, okay, how do you apply that? And if you only go the applicable side without the theory, what good is that? And I hopefully am branching those two things together. But I talk to people all over the world about these things. And they're trying, but we've got to keep going. I mean, it is a big roadblock, and there's not a silver bullet. There's not the magic bullet that is going to solve it. Like, you put data governance in, now that's great. You might have an issue elsewhere. It's just keep your progression going. That's what matters.
Yeah. One of the things that, because I was thinking about reflecting on why this is such a persistent problem, and one would argue even growing. And I think I alluded to it in the introduction. So my personal hypothesis is, well, think about it. You spend 3 years at university or more studying to be a business person or to be a data scientist, to be a programmer developer in the AI space, let's say. Then you start a career, you need to become distinctive and accomplished and recognized to progress. So what do? You double down on your specialization. You probably become even more specialized. I am, the greatest in the healthcare sector at dealing with data
Yeah.
or whatever it might be. And likewise, the business people become more and more focused. I'm a semiconductor business leader, or I'm
Mhm.
a manufacturing business leader. And our circle of influence becomes smaller. Our vocabulary becomes hyper specialized to the point where our friends can't even speak to us at a barbecue because we're that specialized. Do you think that's part of it? As
Yeah.
business wants that level of specialization, and it needs it to a degree? Because I mean, let's face it, the corpus of material you need to understand is enormous.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I think AI is shifting that, right? Because it's no longer specialization to a degree. And what I mean by this is, I saw something on it too, by the way, like an article once. It was like generalization is more taking over. Can you pivot people throughout different roles? What's super interesting is and you could probably gather this from me, this is our second time doing a podcast, right? I love to learn, I love to explore, I love trying things. And I remember early in my career, now this is years ago, I'm older now, they got after me saying, quit bouncing around. You've got to just stick to one and focus on it. I think I have bypassed maybe every single one in that group. And these are people with advanced degrees, some of them, and all this, because I didn't just stay in one thing. I was diversified in my thought process, I was diversified in learning. And so, yes, I do think the isolationist way of doing things worked really, really well, probably 30, 40 years ago. But now that data and AI are so prevalent, so accessible, and so easy to use, you're realizing we don't need to have that as much, especially with AI. It's we need you to be more general. We need you to be able to do this work for maybe 6 months, and then 6 months on this project, and be able to be pivoting and iterating on where you're going. The skills of the future is a fascinating topic we could talk about for hours, I'm sure.
It is, and I would contend, because I think you just very politely disagreed with me then, without using the words "No, Paul, you're wrong." It's okay. I'm used to hearing them. That's what I have children for. But yeah, I mean, I think the university system, the education system, seems to be gold on churning out.
Yes.
I mean, even if you look at the degrees you can get now, that the type of degree you can get, the title of the degree is hyper specialized, and you think, again, I do think it tends to drive this. And, well, let's put it this way. What inspired you, if we are becoming more
Yeah.
generalist, what inspired you then to create a book on data literacy for data professionals? Clearly you saw a problem.
Yeah, well, I think you nailed it. I want to nail something on this because it dovetails right into the data professional. The education is set up in a way that guides you to that specialization.
Mm,
And I am such a nerd that I'm like, well, that's fine if you specialize, branch. But that created this kind of issue with data professionals. And data professionals are very good at using data, but business wasn't their background,
mm.
right? And data professionals get in trouble nowadays in a way, in that if you're unable to share what value your data is bringing to the business, you could be in trouble. And it's not that I don't think data professionals aren't good at data. And it's not that I think business professionals aren't good at business. It's that what we need to be figuring out is, what is our corporate goal? What is the organizational goal? Public company, healthcare company, whatever. And your data strategy is, how is that data supporting the business strategy? That's it. We have overcomplicated what should be a very simple thing. And so to your point, for a data professional, why do they need a business one-on-one? Well, go ask data professionals, how comfortable are you with a cash flow statement, with a balance sheet, an income statement? How comfortable are you figuring out what value your data is really bringing? Not, oh, it helps in this way. If I'm a CFO, you give me that word helps, you need to give me dollars behind it. In what way are you driving dollars for the company, whether in cost savings or revenue? Data professionals need to learn how to do that better, or unfortunately, you might not have your job long. And I hate to say it that way. But a CFO, if you're not seeing the dollars coming through from data work, why would you keep investing in it? Not,
Yeah.
we understand there's value. I understand that. But data professionals need to get really good at churning that out. So how can you do that? Well, hopefully my book will help.
Well, and I think I alluded to this, and you and I have spoken about this before, is that the danger if you lose sight of the business part of it, and it is easy to do when you become very specialized and very good at what you do,
Yeah.
you lose the context and you wind up with these, we've seen it before, data warehouses, data lakes, now data lake houses that are technical tour de forces,
Yeah.
almost inevitably, like a lot of our houses in permanent state of renovation, never finished and never used,
Never
because I'll
finished.
don't go in that room. We're still working on that one. But
Yeah.
weren't you working on that when I was here last, 10 years ago? Yeah,
Yeah.
because it becomes about the task, not the outcome.
Oh, 100%. And part of it is, there is job security in that, right? If we think about
Controversial.
it, you know what I mean? Like, so there was an organization, and maybe I've got the story wrong, but if I remember right, getting old stinks on my memory, right? But I went and visited a company that had like 200 or 400 dashboards, might have been maintaining them all, and they were using six total. Six total. Herein lies the problem. The reason I say job security is, how is that person going to feel the moment you say you're not doing any of those that we're not using anymore?
Yeah.
They might feel like their job is threatened, versus a good data leader would have a backup plan in place. We are removing this and replacing it with this. Even then, is that data professional have the comfort in knowing, I know how to do that? So it's not just data literacy for the non-data professional. There's data and business literacy for the data professionals. How do you truly do exploratory work that can derive value? How can you really put models into place that you know what decisions are being made off of it? This is that area. And I think that there is this fear, if you take away, it's like, you made this so complicated, you have to be there. Versus, well, it's so complicated. If I'm a data professional and I can't see value in it, I'll kick it out of the way, and that's fine. I don't have a problem. You still have your job. Let's just find something new to do. But that is a very different mindset than I think data professionals have. I'm all over, oh, it didn't work. I don't care. Let's still give you a bonus because I learned 50 different things from it. Let's implement something different. That's not a lot of people's mindsets.
Yeah, and this what I liked about the book so far. So I've only just begun the process of reading it. It's literally only just been released, so getting hold of it was a little harder than I thought it would be. So forgive me for not having made it all the way through. But what I like about it is at least as far as I've made it, I kind of feel like it's the book that all tech graduates need. It's forget the data a professional bit because it walks through some of the basic stuffs like roughly what's the makeup of the C-suite and why, what's the role of the board in interacting with the C-suite, therefore how does decisions get made, how do funds get allocated, what language do they use to describe that process so that as you put up your project, how are they going to evaluate it?
Yeah.
I love it was beautiful because it was true. The language was clean and crisp. Everything I read there, I thought, yeah, I remember being in a mentoring session with a young technologist, having to go through in fact, I literally did it there you go. It was on Monday night, 6 p.m. Someone stayed back at the office and I sat there and I worked through the basics of the P&L with them.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, so that's why you're doing what you're doing." Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I've really let you down here as a leader. I haven't shown you the mechanics behind the curtain.
You're nailing it, Paul. And then it's not, you don't need to go back to school. It's the same thing I would tell a non data professional. You don't need to go back to school and be a data scientist or a statistician. Don't worry about it. Go learn key concepts that help you use data better in your job, and vice versa. Hey, data professionals, I don't need you going back to school to get a business degree or an MBA. Don't do it. Learn how these things operate, learn key definitions, learn the power of networking and getting to know your audience more. You want to figure out how to get value? Go talk to your audience and see what they need your data support from. Then you can tangibly say, here's 10 projects, here are the 10 requests, there it is. It's not rocket science, but I think the data and AI space have become so complicated over time that it feels like rocket science versus let's just take a step back and try this. Let's just
Mm.
test that. Do we get anything from it? And if not, it's okay. Learn what you did from it, document it so you don't repeat the same mistake, and then march forward and do something different. It doesn't need some complicated thing. But now, I will say this. Don't get me wrong. Coding can be complicated. Large language model building can be complicated. That's for the advanced professionals. 99% of people are not going to be those people.
Going back to educating these folks on educating, helping them better integrate and exploit their relationship with business people,
Yeah.
because I guess what this is about. One of the things that I thought was interesting about the book is each chapter has a section in there on journaling.
Yep.
Talk to me about what you were thinking there, because I think it's inspired.
I love to journal. I'm a journaler. I like to write my gratitudes, manifestations, thoughts, things that I'm reading in a book. I might pick a quote to do. Here's the fact of the matter. When we read a book, how much do we actually take away from it? Like, I love knowledge, but how about applying that knowledge in your life? Quite literally, probably not as much as we think we do. We read a good idea, yeah, we read a good idea and then we move on, even though we sit here and know it's the right thing to be doing and all this. Well, what if you have a journal assignment in every chapter that gives you something to tangibly do? I hope people use it. I hope people absolutely use it. Write their thoughts, write their questions, write their ideas, create bigger journals throughout it. Like if you were to look at my bag, which is sitting around me somewhere, I could show you my personal journal. As soon as that one's done, I've got 2 or 3 at home to pick up and start for the next one. Right next to me here's a work document, right? I get it. We're living in the digital age, but there's something about writing down. And I think as you're reading that book and ideas pop into your head, don't just move on. You'll forget it. We are too distracted in this world. Instead, write the idea down in a journal and either come back to it, see if you can apply it, test it. And by the way, if you test it and it succeeds, you might be gathering personal data points on things you could do to improve. So I'm such a journaler, Paul. I love it. I think we've lost touch with that, to be honest. And we live in an era when we have so much at our disposal. Just writing thoughts down can be a very meditative, good thing that hopefully improves us in some way or another.
And I would go one step further because, again, having looked, I think, at the first chapter or two, the journal is almost like a pocket mentor because it instructs or suggests or I guess implies it's holding you accountable for things like write down 3 networking opportunities and go and execute against them. I mean, you know, talk about putting people outside of their comfort zone, pushing them to do something. It's very specific. It gives great guidelines as to how to select those people. And reading the book, I thought, you know, I can see this activating. It's literally the advice I give to mentees. I'm sitting there going, "This is fabulous. This is absolutely spot on." If a data professional picks this up and just follows the breadcrumbs you've put out before them, they're going to go really far.
Well, and when you look at what AI is doing, where the technical is becoming less technical and difficult for the majority of people,
Hmm.
where is it really going to hit home? Your soft skills, your ability to be a leader, to project manage, to network, to communicate. Like, I hope they take it to heart. Like, when you think about a bodybuilder or a fitness specialist or a professional athlete, you're literally breaking your body down, i.e., getting out of its comfort zone to become elite. Well, I hate to say it to people who maybe don't want to network and things like that. Get over it. Like, if that's a blunt way to say it, and it doesn't have to, this is the other thing. It doesn't have to be an hour long networking session. If you're in an office and you know so and so likes this coffee or this kind of tea, take 15 minutes and just go for a walk. It doesn't have to be anything sophisticated, but I hope it does push people past their comfort zone. I'm huge in that sort of sense. I love ultra marathons. I love fitness. You're literally breaking your muscles down and repairing them. So guess what? Let's break down the old way we used to be data professionals and jump forward into the new way.
I've looked forward a couple of chapters, haven't read them yet. Maybe you can tell me what I'm going to expect, because there seems to be a section in there on talking about your projects and how to think about your projects. And there's a whole section dedicated to technical debt. I'm curious as to why you've got that in there. That's a very specific and, I would say, current term or modern term.
Yep.
And then you've got a section there on communication. So do you want to maybe break down some of the highlights, particularly focusing on technical debt for me?
Let's focus on technical debt to begin with, because that is something. It's a really balancing act, right? You're trying to pivot forward and innovate and be quick and do all that while the technical debt stacks up. Well, let's take a step back from the data debt. How many companies over years have just purchased more and more tools to try and solve the problem? Probably a lot. Yeah,
Guilty.
it's very, very common, right? So
Hmm.
there's data tech debt. Well, how many times have we implemented more and more dashboards, i.e., that company that had 200 or 400 maintaining all that versus six? And that took up how much time that could have been used elsewhere? Innovative debt, right? And how many times do we put this at the fingertips of people who are not data professionals and tell them to go to work without proper data literacy training? Call that literacy debt. The reality is, though, wipe all of that off of our minds. I don't want to say start all the way over, because that's hard, but take a step back and say, do an evaluation of your data work. Do I know how this ties to my organization's goals and objectives? And if you don't, and you keep doing it, you might be racking up more debt. We
Hmm.
have to get comfortable as data professionals of looking at it and saying, this does not tie anywhere. I'm going to reach out to my audience. We'll talk about communication in a minute. I'm going to communicate with them and find out, are you even using this? If yes, how? If not, why not? And yes, it takes the upfront work to have the guts to say, I'm squashing 60% of our data work. Here is why. I've gone through the work because we're just accumulating more and more data lakes and data lake houses and data warehouses, and what other buzzword can we come up with versus I am tangibly using data to drive business goals. That's it. And if work we are doing is not doing that, on can come the data debt. And that's not what we need. It's not going to solve anything. So now let me highlight why I think communication is so important. I met with the CEO of a data and analytics better once, and I asked the question, how many data scientists, something like this. This has been a long time, so I might mess up some wording, but the premise will remain. How many data scientists would you have present to your board or C-suite? And he put his hand up and he went like this. And I don't think that's necessarily fair. There are data scientists who can communicate, but the premise is not lost in that they were not trained on communication with different levels or areas of a business per se. They were trained on data science. Fair, going back to specialization versus what I call the secret sauce to, how do I describe it? The secret sauce of data and analytic work or data literacy work is communication. Because you can build the most sophisticated model with so much insight in it, communicate like crap, and no one gets anything from it. Nothing. What good is that? Versus, for me, maybe the most vital skill for any employee, data or non-data employee in general, is your ability to communicate. Are
Mm.
you effective at communicating? Needs, wants, the whys, whatever it is, we've got to learn how to communicate. And then the final highlight I'll talk about from the book is I had multiple people answer questions. I think it was what, 3 or 4 questions. Same
Yeah.
one across different data professionals or non-data professionals. I'm one voice. Can I bring other voices to the table who have great thoughts, great insight? This is the network. If you want to know why I am maybe as successful as I am, turn to my network. See who I surround myself with. See what leaders are out there that I'm with. How in the world did I get the job that I currently am in with Senior Vice President of Data and AI Transformation at Agile One? A vice president here heard me on a podcast with someone we both know. Basically, I think she said, we need him to speak at our customer event. I spoke as a speaker, as a guest at their customer forum. I networked while I was there. Months later, we mutually discuss having a job. It's one of those that communicate and network and get to know people. To your point, Paul, it could throw people out of their comfort zone. I don't care. I'm an introvert. I am an introvert and I travel the world speaking. And you know what? Yeah, at the end of the day, after the event, I might go back to the hotel. But during the event, hopefully I'm talking to people. I spoke at an event I think it was just last month in Cape Town, South Africa. I'm now mentoring someone at the event down there, right? I mean, it's just do things. And I hope that data professionals and non-data professionals from the data literacy side understand that everyone has a seat at the tables we're discussing, but you've got to pull your chair out. You've got to put forth effort in, or you're not necessarily going to succeed in it.
I love that section on communication. And again, reading that book every now and again, I get the opportunity to speak with authors and read a book, and I think to myself, yeah, it was directed at this audience, but the applicability of this is far broader than the audience it was intended for. And Business 101, I feel like I could give it to anyone in a technical role. Maybe say, hey, just breeze through the chapters on data if that doesn't float your boat. But do the rest of it, read the rest of it. It's going to be a great primer for business,
Yeah.
and there's some really great coaching tips for young, emerging, and even established tech
Yeah.
execs. I think it's just, you can tell I'm quite effusive about it. It's genuine. It's not because you're here. I literally was looking at it and went, wow, that's the book I wish I had when I was like 21.
Maybe I haven't said this out loud, but this could be my best-selling book. Even though Be Data Literate is by far the best-selling book out of my 4 so far, this one just launched. It's got a much broader audience. But if you think about it, this should be a primer that IT and data professionals take. And it's not written I love to write. I love to put ideas down. But to your point, Paul, I'm not academic. This is real world thoughts. I write in the way I talk. People, I think, relate to that. I don't sit there and mull over every sentence. I don't do that. I write who I am. And hopefully people can get some value from it. I hope so.
We'll wrap up with a couple of questions. First one, are we still going to be talking about putting your royalties, your ridiculous royalties to one side? How is that Lamborghini going, by the way?
Well, I'm not a car person, so I definitely do not have a Lambo.
Are we still going to be talking about this problem in 10 years?
Absolutely. But I don't think necessarily in a negative light, as much as we think. There is no end to this journey. And the reason I say that is I don't know where AI will be in 10 years, right? It's no longer just data literacy. It's data and AI literacy. It's an ongoing journey learning how to apply the latest tech, the latest trends, the latest advancements with all the data in combination with the human. Maybe data and AI literacy transform into a new term at that point. My hope, though, would be that everybody that ever hears this episode is on an ongoing journey that they feel themselves will never end.
Mm.
We've got to stay on top of trends as much as we can, but we can't. I can't tell you every single thing I've read about AI and this and that. There's just no way to stay on top of it. So I don't think the journey ends. So that might be the way to say it, is it's no longer necessarily a problem in the future. Who knows? Who knows with deep fakes and things? Who knows? But I hope we're still on a journey of learning regardless of where it goes. Because that's really, if you think of the term literacy, from a business literacy, an AI literacy, a data literacy, Can we keep learning and growing?
I wish I had to put this question at the start, but it is where it is. How do I spot as a business person or as a technology leader if I've got a literacy problem, and what concrete steps can folks take?
I think I don't even know if you need to spot it. What I would say is you put an assessment in place. Don't wait to spot something. Just start off and say, you know what, we're going to take a skills assessment. And this is a perfect time to do it. We don't know what the skills of the future are going to look like. We don't, with the way AI is going. So instead of waiting to spot a problem, I suggest every leader find the right assessment. They exist out there. You could create them in-house, or you could buy, off the shelf, out of the box assessments, and just put an assessment in place and allow it to define the gaps that exist. So it could be that you're really good at data visualization, you're lousy at data interpretation of those visualizations. So you know your literacy gap is in interpretation. It could be you're really good at those two, but there's no data science. Well, you've got a gap there. So start off assessing without spotting the problem. Now let's talk about spotting a problem. Spotting a problem comes in when if it is just repeat, rinse, wash, same thing over and over, dashboard, KPI metrics, you are not advancing data very well. That's what a lot of companies do. Here's a lot of dashboards, but do you have good diagnostic analytics, insight coming out of it? Do you have predictive analytics coming out of it? Do you have machine learning and things coming out of it? So not that descriptive analytics and dashboards don't matter. They absolutely do. You need the information. But if that's where you stop, you've spotted your problem. There are 4 levels of analytics, not just one. And so if all you're doing is dashboards without really finding the insight behind why things are happening, without using those to make data-driven decisions that could build new predictions, without gathering new data, in essence, without discovering how data is moving the needle forward on the business goals, you should be able to spot that. Like, I think for a lot of good leaders, you could get a feel on if it's happening or not. But if you're just seeing the same thing over and over again, I would challenge your employees to try something different. Here's a prime example. Here's a way you could do that. If you're a leader where you hold a regular meeting where the employees are walking you through a dashboard, tell them to stop. They now have to send that dashboard a week in advance so you can read it, because I promise you'll know how. They now have to come to that meeting for an hour and explain the reason why things look the way they do in that dashboard. You are going to make people uncomfortable, but you are now making them accountable for what is happening in the dashboard, not just for building the dashboard. That is a different way of doing it. I've heard it done. It will make them uncomfortable. But imagine if a dashboard gets sent out a week in advance and the team says, all right, we're going to look into this. No computers are allowed in the meeting. We're going to come with questions and we're going to have a discussion. How much more valuable has that meeting become than just someone walking through a dashboard? Nope. Now computers stay out of the room, phones stay out of a room, 1 hour, everybody comes with 2 questions, discussion time. Because then you might have 5 calls to action after that meeting versus literally just looking at a dashboard for an hour that I could have read on my own.
You're going to get a lot of I don't knows. Well, let's go find out. I have a
But
funny
let's go
feeling.
find out. Exactly right. But that's why you need business literacy. It's why you need data literacy. You need people who are willing to push that lever.
It's interesting. We'll have a conversation after we finish the formal podcast recording. I'm not sure whether anyone else will be interested in my problems, but I'd love to chat to you about some. Um,
We will help you.
let's wrap up. A couple of questions. First one: what do you think is the biggest opportunity and the most pressing challenge in the AI space? If you have an opinion on it.
Yeah, it's finding real use cases where real value can be derived. There's so much hype and buzz and all that around it. Forget it. Forget the hype. Forget the buzz. Instead, find use cases where generative AI, it might not be generative AI. Maybe it's machine learning. Might not be machine learning. But find real pain points and use cases and then apply the AI towards it. Don't just buy tools, right? Find where generative AI might help. It could be, I know for me, it was an RFP, a request for proposal responses. We stuck an AI model on top of it, a generative AI model, and it saved time. That's a prime example. But find real pain points and where you can really get value. Just don't throw money at it. That's not going to be the solution.
We're coming up to the end of the year as we're recording. It's
Yeah.
December, which is coincidentally when you published your book. So it seems something of a tradition in the tech industry to ask for predictions for 2025, prognosticate, if you will.
Oh my goodness, man. I'm very interested to see, I think people are wondering about training models. There's only one internet, there's only so much data there. That's fine. AI is going to create new data, and the AI models are going to replicate and do more and more. I wouldn't be shocked. I don't know if we achieve full AGI in 2025, but I think you could see substantial movement towards it. I think jobs, you could see some big impact on jobs. Not necessarily that I'm thinking 30% of jobs are eliminated. No, but there maybe companies start. I think I've already started to see it. Companies are not hiring, might not be firing, but they're not hiring. They're just figuring out ways to put things in place. So I think the job market, I guess if I was to predict, the job market, I don't know if it becomes fully unsettled, blah, 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 but I wonder if there's going to be this integration of companies are figuring out how to better align this. Now, this is not my prediction. This comes from, is it the CEO of Huggy Face, who said you'll have your first AI protest in 2025. I don't know if I'd be shocked if that happened.
What's an AI protest?
Well, so what happened with the Writers Guild or whatever it was in the US last year?
Mm-hmm.
So could you have protests and strikes or whatever because companies are looking to implement AI versus have people in roles? Possibly. Could you have content creation with Sora if you've started to play with Sora out of just launching not long ago? I mean, there's disruption is going to be there, but disruption brings opportunity. I guess finally for me, let's go to literacy. What I would hope to see is you're going to continue to see companies putting this as a big thing, and I think putting better use cases around it.
Well, with that, I want to thank you, Jordan, for, well, number one, congratulate you again on
Thank you.
your fourth literary baby. It sounds to me like there are many more progeny to come.
I can tell you, Paul, book 5 is approved. I start writing next year. So something new is coming.
You heard it here, everyone. So I'm excited for that. Congratulations on the book. As I say, I think highly recommended. I don't think that's any secret here. People should check it out. Great gift for a person you care about in your life, whether they're mid-career or start of their career, it's a great piece of work. And frankly, even if you think you don't need it, it's worth a look. I learned something reading it myself, so check it out. So thank you for joining us. Good luck with the rest of the year and into next year. We'll check out how your predictions went in 12 months' time. We'll have you back for that. And to review the new book. I want to thank Cloudera for hosting another episode of the AI Forecast podcast. And thank you all for tuning in on your non-existent radios.
You and I, we're dating ourselves. Paul, we're dating ourselves now. We really are brothers. I mean, just look at our screen now. I mean, absolutely.
I've got this vision of someone on an AM radio going, I'm tuning into the AI
Yeah, wait, where's the
podcast.
signal? I can't find you.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, if you like what you've heard, feel free to reach out to Cloudera on social media at Cloudera on LinkedIn. So if you've got any questions for our guests or feedback for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. We appreciate any feedback you have for it, even if it's not great. We love to learn. With that, we'll see you all on our next episode.